Hey guys, a bit of an emergency meeting here. Okay, I've seen some of your Facebook posts and they've been kind of scaring me, so let's put a few things out there, alright? Hi, Pancake. Now, this is a box of crackers. If I try to sell this box for $47,000, how many boxes am I going to sell? Not a lot, right? Now, if I sell it for $1, I'm probably going to move a lot of units, but not at a profit to me. If I have a reliable set of 10 customers, it's better for me to sell it for $10 than for $5 because more money is more than less money, right? This is all grade school stuff. This is not even Econ 101. But you have to understand that it is better for me as the seller to have a higher price than a lower price. That's how this works. Of course, there's going to be some sort of inflection point where if my price is too high, then I lose customers. But there's going to be some point where I can maximize my profits. That's basically what we call it in capitalism, what the market can bear, right? Now, if you compare California's economy to, say, the Midwest, you know that prices are higher in California. And while that may seem like a terrible thing, you have to understand too that people there make a lot more money than people in the Midwest. If you took California to be its own actual country, it would be the 5th largest economy in the world. That's why the cost of living is so high over there. If you make less than $100,000 in some parts of California, like Palo Alto, where Google is, you are below the poverty line. Okay, so making $100,000 is easy to do in California. Making $100,000 in the Midwest, not so much, right? So if I'm selling this box of crackers in California, it's better for me to sell it at a higher price rather than a lower price. I'm not going to be able to sell the same box of crackers at the same price in the Midwest because people there can't afford it. What the market can bear is less, so the price of the box is going to be less. Now, that's when there's a difference in geographical location. But this is also true if there's a difference in temporal location. If we're talking about good times versus bad times, the good times are when the prices are going to be higher. The bad times are going to be when the prices are lower. When you're voting for someone based on the price of gas being low, what you're hoping for is economic collapse, and that's not a good thing. Look this up online. You can go to Forbes.com. There's all kinds of articles on the difference between inflation, deflation, and disinflation. The economists all agree that a small amount of inflation is good for us because it keeps the economy rolling. If the economy is overinflated, it does mean that there's a lot of stress on the lower class to be able to afford the basic things that everyone else is able to afford. But if the economy is healthy, the prices are still going to be higher rather than lower. That's why we don't go back down to the times when you can pay for a phone call with a quarter. We're just never going to go back that way, at least without economic collapse in between, right? So deflation is when the economy shrinks. It's associated with recessions. That's when prices go down. People stop spending as much money. Companies don't make as much money. They lay off people. Unemployment goes up. It becomes a vicious cycle. So a small amount of inflation is what you want. When you have a large amount of inflation, you want to go down to a small amount of inflation. You don't want to go to deflation. That's when you have a recession. So again, if you're voting for prices going way down, it's because you're hoping for economic collapse. At this point in time, there's only one political candidate going for disinflation. The other guy is going for inflation while the people voting for him are hoping for deflation. This doesn't make any sense, guys. Now, I know that some of you are listening to the news and your news is telling you that the economy is really terrible right now, except that it's not. I tell my friends on the left the same thing that I tell my friends on the right, and that is to get your economic information from economists, okay? Now, if your news is reporting from economists, that's great. But if they're not reporting from economists and they're reporting instead from politicians, you're not getting your information from the right sources. Get your economics from the economists. Now, there's 16 Nobel laureate economists that say that Trump's policies are going to overinflate the economy, and it's because of his strategy with tariffs. Now, a lot of people think that tariffs on China are going to be great, but they're not. And there's a real basic reason for this, okay? A lot of people don't even understand what tariffs are, so we have to talk about that too. A tariff on a foreign country is not a tax on a foreign country. A tariff on a foreign country is a tax on the American importer who has to pass that expense on to the customer. They're not going to eat it in the shorts, they're going to pass it on to you. Now, tariffs are effective when a country has a small number of exports and a large number of competitors. For example, Russia's oil. Russia's primary export is oil, but there's lots of countries that make oil. There's lots of other places where you can get oil. Now, over the last several years, Russia has been pissing off everyone they can point a finger at, and so naturally, all of Europe is trying to get themselves off of Russian oil. The fewer customers that they have, the cheaper their oil gets because they have to lower the price to convince people to buy their oil. Now, in the United States, we could buy Russian oil, but tariffs, embargoes, and lots of other things would act to counteract that. If a company were to buy Russian oil while a tariff was employed on Russian oil, that would mean that they would have to pay a large tax to the United States government. They would pass that cost on to you, and if you're not going to buy it, they're not going to move it. If they can't move it, they're not going to buy it, and that means that Russia is out a customer. If Russia is out a customer, that hurts them. That's good for us. That's how tariffs work. But you can't do that for all of China. 90% of the things in Walmart are made out of Chinese products. Does that mean that Walmart is just going to suddenly close shop? No, they're going to pass the price on to you. Prices are going to go up. Even if they wanted to buy American, they can't because we don't have enough services that can make and scale up to the level that would be needed to repopulate all the shelves across all of the Walmarts in the United States. And maybe you think that it's better for us to buy American. In principle, that's great, but unemployment is already below 5%. Where are we going to get the workers to suddenly make a bunch of t-shirts? We've had historic lows in unemployment. It was below 4% for over 22 months under Biden, as it was by December of last year, right? So where are we going to get the employees that are going to be necessary to scale up any kind of operation to fill all the t-shirts, all the pants, every piece of apparel, every product in Walmart? Where would we get those from? Now, maybe you're thinking that all the people that are on unemployment can suddenly take up those jobs and start manufacturing tons of t-shirts from out of nowhere. But why would we even do that? We are a leading country in the world for technology. We land shit on the moon. We land shit on Mars. We won the space race. Microsoft just recently purchased a major gaming industry and then immediately laid off 1,900 software developers. Are you going to tell me that 1,900 software developers who were just making $140,000 should suddenly go to making t-shirts for Walmart? Why should they take a $100,000 pay cut to make t-shirts when we're not known for that? We are known for doing better things. We should be able to hire highly technical people and put them into highly technical positions. What we should be doing is expanding on places where we can put software developers rather than expanding on the places where we can make more t-shirts. There was a debate recently on Jubilee between this guy who goes by the name of Destiny on YouTube and Twitch and whatever, and he was debating a bunch of people who were voting for Trump. And one of the guys' arguments is that the reason that we should shift our economy from being high-tech to being low-tech was that it would be helpful for us to have more low-income jobs, low-tech jobs, low-skilled jobs for people who plan on immigrating to this country. But why should we do that? I mean, this is actually from the group of people who don't even like immigrants. If you want to deter immigration to the United States, maybe it's good for us to not have low-tech jobs making Chinese t-shirts, because maybe we should actually be exporting low-tech jobs to other countries so that we can be the country that keeps making the high-tech stuff. Maybe that would be a deterrent for all the people who are trying to immigrate to this country. It doesn't make any sense for us to shift to a low-tech country. It doesn't make any sense for us to become a low-skill country just so we can populate all the Walmarts in the country. And that's what Trump's plan is to do, is to shift us from a high-tech to a low-tech country, to make everything American, to stop buying from China, and then suddenly that's supposed to make America great, even though all the people that we employ are suddenly taking a $100,000 pay cut because they used to be a software developer and now they have to make t-shirts and jeans. How does that make any sense? How does that make us a better economy? How does that make us great again? Just try to think about this for a little bit and understand that's not the direction we should be going. Now, another thing I have to talk about is the fact that our economy is actually doing really well right now if you would just Google it. I know that your politicians and your news media are saying that it's terrible, but they don't actually have the facts on their side. Inflation is low, unemployment is low, GDP is up. These are all the best things for the economy, but they won't even Google it because now they don't trust Google. Now, this is the group, of course, that previously had been going around telling everyone to do their own research. And I already have a video on that. I've been working on it for a while. It's going to be over an hour. It's going to be talking about all the scientific misinformation in the world, specifically by the people who claim to be pro-science but are actually working against it at every step of the way. And just to give you the highlight here, The people telling you to do your own research don't even know what the word means. They don't know the connotation, they don't know the denotation, and they certainly don't even know the etymology, let alone the academic use of the term. So when they go about telling people to do research, acting like they can get the equivalent of a medical degree or be more knowledgeable than an actual physician who actually put all the time and effort into getting an actual education, the people who act like you can just spend enough time on PubMed or WebMD and then suddenly be a medical doctor, that is scientific misinformation, and that is not how any of this works. Okay, you should actually be getting your information from the experts. But there's a lot of people all of a sudden that are not even willing to Google because they suddenly think that Google is lying to them, and that's not happening. Now, one of the best examples of this not happening are all the people who are actually going around saying that if you go to Google and search for George Washington, that you're going to come up with this guy. And that's not happening. These are the people telling you to do your own research, but they won't even hop on Google themselves to see if this claim about this guy popping up when you type in George Washington is actually true. They haven't actually searched for George Washington themselves. And so for this reason, I have to interrupt my efforts to make a video about doing your own research to talk about why you should actually still be using Google, because these people suddenly don't know how the internet works. So let me explain this, okay? Google is a company that became famous for Google.com. Google.com is the web address for an application that does a search function. It's a search engine. Okay, now the product that came up with this image is Google's chatbot called Nexus. This is not a search engine output. This is a chatbot output. Chatbots and search engines are different things. If you search for George Washington, you still get the actual George Washington. Isn't that amazing? Now, to the extent that people say that Google is lying, no, it's not. The search engine's job is to find things. If you search for evidence that the earth is flat, you are going to find evidence that the earth is flat. It is not the search engine's job to correct you on what you think you should be looking for. It is not a truth engine, it is a search engine, but it's also not a chatbot. A chatbot is not a search engine. Someone used the Gemini service to create this image, and then they uploaded it to mydumbassblogspot.com or wherever the hell they put it. It's not going to show up in a search for George Washington in general, because there are plenty of reasons why the algorithm would go to Yale or Harvard or Stanford or some other legitimate source long before it goes over here. If you actually try to search for this particular image, it takes a long time. You have to be very, very specific to try to find this particular image. So the people telling you to do your own research suddenly won't even use Google because someone told them about how this is somehow the search engine result, when it's not, because they didn't do their own research to even find that. They don't understand how the internet works, and I'm sorry to break it to you, but Google is still a good place to go to search for things. Now, as far as the legitimacy and accuracy of any information that you find from a source that shows up in a Google search, you have to understand, first of all, there is an outside world. Things still exist. Yale is a university. It preceded the internet. Stanford is a university. It preceded the internet. Oxford, go through all the universities. They still existed long before the internet. Now, each of those places now have websites. You can go to their websites and they can present valid information. If Google.com gives you a source and that source is a university, you can pretty reliably trust the information that comes from that site. What you should keep in mind is that you can get results from unreliable sources, but that is not Google's fault. If someone else lies to you, that's not their problem. Again, Google.com is a search engine, not a truth engine. That's your job to know what to search for and how to vet the sources yourself. If you come across a source that you're not familiar with, that's your job to vet them. Go to their homepage, go to their About Us, find out who they are, what are their motivations, where do they get their sources from? Do the people who write for them have legitimate credentials, or do they refer to people with legitimate credentials? You can find these things out. Don't just stop trusting Google because someone told you that Google lies to you. That's not how this works. So if you can't price a box of crackers, maybe democracy isn't for you. Maybe you shouldn't be voting for anybody. Maybe you should stay home and find out how basic things work. Or you can rely on the 16 Nobel laureates who tell you how the economy is going to go. Now, if you're wondering why the economists would be behind one candidate and the rich people would be behind the other candidate, understand that there is a lot of money to be made if you're rich and the economy fluctuates. There's a whole buy low, sell high, and there's another extension of that that says when there's blood on the streets, buy property. There's a reason for that. It's because let's think of it in my situation, right? I own property in California. I have someone who pays my mortgage who is going to pay off my 30-year loan over the course of the next 30 years. It's going to take me 30 years to get a return on my investment in that, and that'll be just in time for me to start retiring. But if, let's say, I have $1 billion and the economy collapses, my net worth may go down by half, but I still have $500 million. I can still buy lots of people's property. So while the poor people are getting evicted from their homes, from the properties that they can no longer afford, I can snatch those up for a huge discount. And then when the economy recovers in a few years, I've made 4 or 5, many times my initial investment. And now not only do I not have just $1 billion, I have 4 or 5, $6 billion, right? You can make a lot of money from an economy that goes up and down a lot. So please understand that one of the investment strategies of rich people, the smart ones, is that they want to encourage poor people to destabilize the economy from time to time because they can make a killing when they do so, and they will do it off of your backs. So again, maybe you should get your economic information from economists who don't have a personal stake in lying to you so that they can take your money later. It's not the economists who are sitting around offering you the convenience of buying your home from you when the economy collapses and you can no longer afford it, so that they can sell it back to you when the economy has recovered at a much higher marked up price than when you sold it the first time. And that kind of leads into my next topic of running the country like a company, and why not only is that a moronic idea, that is an oxymoronic idea. I just want you to think about this for a moment. If the country is run like a company, where do the profits go? Because if it's you, that's socialism, and we can't have that. You hate it when the government gives out money to the public, so that's off the table. So if you're not the person that the money goes to from the government, it has to go to someone else, right? Maybe it's the CEOs of the company. Well, that would not be a democracy, that would be a plutocracy, and you don't know what that is because you won't use Google. But understand, this is not in your interest. This is not when you make a better deal out of the situation. And when it comes to CEOs, it's worth noting that the United States is unique across all the developed nations in the world in terms of how much money its top executives make compared to the average worker. There have been a few studies on this, but the typical range is about 300 to 400 times the average income of the average worker. Now, some studies even say it goes up to 500. So just for round numbers, let's say that you work at a company that has 500 employees and the CEO is making 500 times the average worker's income. You realize that means that they basically just double the income of the average worker, right? Let's say that you have a wife or husband and both of you make $50,000 each, right? So you have a total household income of $100,000. If you are struggling to make ends meet, how much money would you have to make in addition to what you currently make to start getting ahead of some of your bills, to add a little comfort in your belt line, to just make things a little easier? What, $3,000 a month, $5,000 a month? That would still help you out a lot, right? That's $60,000 at the end of the year. So if you made double your income as a household, and even if that got taxed, even if you got pushed into a larger tax bracket so that $40,000 of that went away, that's still $60,000 in your pocket. Understand that doubling your annual income would be life-changing for you. So how much more than 2 times your income should a CEO actually make? I mean, I'm not saying here that CEOs shouldn't make more money, and if the CEO is the founder of the company, of course they deserve a return on their investment. But it's going to take me, as a middle-class person, 30 years to make a return on my investment in one property. How fast does the founder of a company need to return their investment in order to make everything make sense? If doubling your annual income is life-changing for you, surely a CEO could get by and have a comfortable life if they only made 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 40, or 50 times the average worker's income. Why do they need, at any point in time, 475 or 500 times the average worker's income? But there are all kinds of people who will complain and say, how is that fair to the CEOs? I mean, because surely it makes sense for the people at the bottom to say, please, sir, may I have some less? I mean, talk about Stockholm Syndrome. You realize that even slavery is expensive, right? You have to have enforcers, you have to have bounty hunters, you have to put a lot of muscle into the system to make the system work. They've got you doing it for free. They just have to pay you less than what you're worth, and then you celebrate them. How does that make sense? Now, of course, the left wants to tax the rich, and I mean, that kind of makes sense, but that has all kinds of problems of its own. If you look at the Californian economy, for example, they have big problems whenever the rich people leave because all of a sudden they have massive losses in their revenue. But it would be great if instead we get to grow the middle class, have people get paid a livable wage, pay them what they're worth, and then at the rate that you already tax them with, you could have a much more stable economy that doesn't collapse every time a rich person wants to go away. And it's not as much of a burden on them because they're not being singled out. But there was a time when CEOs got paid less, and magically, people could afford actual homes on a single income. Imagine that. Now, does the left have a solution for that? No, they don't. But it's certainly not going to be the people on the other side who are telling you to vote for a person who's going to collapse the economy so that they can make 4 or 5 times their initial investment by taking your home from you and selling it back to you once they've made their profit margins. Now let's go back to this ratio of 475 or 500 to 1. If you worked for a company that only had 2 people, the boss and you made bicycles, and you made a profit of $510 off this high-end bicycle that you sold, that you made with your bare hands. You made 100% of the bicycle while the boss did the boss stuff. Does it make any sense for the boss to get 500 of those dollars and you only get 10? If you think that's reasonable, then how low would you have to go to make it reasonable? Now, of course, the person who started the business had to have money to make money, so they had to risk something to start the business and get it going. I get that, and they should absolutely get a return on their investment. But should they get $500 of every bicycle that gets sold in perpetuity until the end of time? Does it make any sense for someone who builds that bike, who builds 100% of that bike, to only get 10 of those dollars? How many dollars would that person have to give over to the person who's making 500 times what they are in order for it to make sense to you? I mean, if you're going to sit there and say, please, sir, may I have some less? How much less are we talking here? I mean, you can do this right now. There's this thing called GoFundMe. You can make a GoFundMe for your CEO if that's what you want to do. But make it make sense, please. Now, some of you may be saying, oh, that's easy. I'll just start my own bike company. But remember, you just spent your last $10 on gas getting to work that day. Maybe the reason that you can't start your own company is because you're not getting paid a livable wage in the first place. Now, of course, another complicating factor is maybe you work for Ford, and there's more than one employee at every company, right? So maybe you only make 10% of a Ford. If you build 10% of every vehicle, why should you only make 1/475th of that profit off that vehicle? Now, speaking of the automotive industry, do you realize that the government has been subsidizing Tesla this entire time? If you look on the Tesla website, every single vehicle is discounted by $7,500. That's your money. That is your money as a taxpayer that's been going into that company to keep it going, to keep it viable, to get product moved off the shelf. So here's a question for you. Where are your government-issued Tesla stocks? Because as far as I can tell, they're in Elon Musk's pocket. So while you're sitting there celebrating him being a rich person, he's rich because of you. If we're going to run the country like a company, why are you not making a profit when he makes a profit? Donald Trump was in office for 4 years. Did he end that socialism? No. Do you think Elon Musk is voting for him now because he thinks Donald Trump will end that socialism? Do you think that if Donald Trump gets in office again, he's going to end the money that's going to Elon Musk's pocket and instead give you a return on Tesla investments? What do you think Donald and Elon have in store for our future? But I said that running a country like a company is oxymoronic, and it is, because where does this company get its profits? From you. You're a taxpayer. You're the reason that the country would have an income. right? So to maximize profits, are they going to lower taxes? Does that make sense? If they lower your taxes, they're lowering their profit. So either the country is run like a company and it's run for profit, and then that profit goes back to you if you like socialism, or it goes to someone else and that's not good for you, right? Or they can lower taxes so that they can lower their profit, but then they're not being a good profit maker, are they? Okay, you don't have a lot of options here. The people who founded this country did not imagine that public service would be for profit. It's supposed to be a public service. You're supposed to get something back. That's not necessarily monetary. Okay, we have a big military. We have nuclear missiles in the ocean. We have nuclear missiles underground. We have an infrastructure that ensures that other people are not going to launch missiles at us. That's why we don't have to do missile drills anymore. We don't have to cower under our desks hoping that Russia is going to hit us with anything. That's something we get as a service for what we put into the government. We also get roads and fire departments and police, etc., etc. But the country is not supposed to be a for-profit organization. It's supposed to be a non-profit. It's supposed to be a public service. Now, of course, nonprofits still make money. They just don't make profit. They can still keep the infrastructure going, etc., etc. But running the country for profit doesn't make sense in any capacity unless you believe that you are supposed to get money back. If you don't think that you're supposed to be getting money back, then you have to ask yourself what the profit is doing. And if you do think you're supposed to be getting your money back, maybe it should be in the form of Tesla stocks. So again, where are your government-issued Tesla stocks? These are questions you need to ask yourself before you go to the voting booth. So again, if you can't price a box of crackers, maybe democracy isn't for you. Maybe you should sit this one out. Go to a search engine, use the search engine to find out what search engines do, learn how the internet works, and then work your way up to understanding what the differences are between inflation, deflation, and disinflation. Understand that we only have one candidate going for disinflation and the other two options are not good for you. And then maybe think about why you shouldn't be running the country like a company for profit if you can't figure out where that profit's supposed to be going or how it's supposed to get there. Make up your mind about what you think it is, and if you can't do that, maybe democracy isn't for you. Maybe you should sit this one out. Or you could learn what a search engine is for, use the search engine to find out what the economists say about the economy, and then vote for the person who the economists say is good for the economy if that's the thing that you care about most. I'm going to leave the decision to you because that's all I can do. But I just hope that we don't have to keep having these kinds of conversations. And that's all I got. God damn it.